Hello, Dan Ihrke from DT Systems Dog Training Equipment and Green Acre Sportsman's Club. Here again with DT the dog, and today we're going to be working on e-collar conditioning using the DT Systems 1800 series collar. As we did with formal training, we start the dog out confined for at least 20 minutes in the crate. We've got both the e-collar and the choke chain on the dog before we get him out, so we're going to have control the whole time. Let's start out with the dog staying in the crate. Sit. And we're also going to put our short lead on while he's in there, just as we did with formal training. Sit. DT. Sit. Good boy. We've turned our e-collar unit on, and we've tested the e-collar unit with our test light before we put it on the dog, so we know everything's ready to rock and roll. And we're going to start out with a concept called finding the dog's level. Now remember, the prerequisite to being here, guys, is your dog completely understands formal obedience. He understands the stair-step concept, and he's 75+% successful on his short and long lead endeavors. So we're going to go ahead and find this dog's level. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to turn our transmitter down to its lowest setting, and we're going to use the nick button and watch the dog's reaction. What we're looking for is any sort of recognition in his posture or his body language that he's feeling the electric pressure. Okay, so I'm starting at 1, and I'm just going to go ahead and move up the chain. There's 3, 4, 5. Okay, there you notice that his ears twitched a bit. Let's look at that again. There's the neck. Do you see how he looked up? I didn't say a word to him, but he moved his head in reaction. So he's feeling that number 5. So that's going to be the start of our working level with him. And what we're really going to try to do with this guy is build an association between the pull on the leash, negative reinforcement, and the electric stimuli, or the nick from the collar, another form of negative reinforcement. And eventually, we'll be able to stop using the lead and only use the e-collar. So we found the beginning of his working level, and today we're going to work through our big 300 obedience and try to get 5 or 6 nicks working from the beginning of that working level and stair-stepping up about 2 or 3 levels. We're not going to try to get him to work off lead or anything special. We're just over the next couple weeks of training going to get 4 or 5 nicks a day, and always a success when we're finished, such that the dog begins to learn what the collar means. Heel. So you notice I've got my e-collar in the one hand and the leash in the other. We're going to start out with the first of the big 3, which is sit, stay. Step out with my outside foot. Good. If the dog got up from the sit, stay, it would look like this. Sit, pull, nick at the same time. I'm literally nicking the collar, pulling the lead at the same time. And then, of course, a chance for success. Sit. Good boy. There's my success. Good. Now we'll work on healing. Heel. And remember, you've got to have the dog's got to be ready for this, guys. He's got to be doing well enough on his obedience that he's coordinated enough where you can get away with having one hand on the collar and one hand on the lead. If he's not ready, you're going to be trying to do too many things with your hands. Heel. Good boy. Good. Good. Sit. Good. Heeling him on both sides. Heel, nick. Good. Sit. Heel. Boy. Good boy. If he was to fail here, guys, it would be one of 2 things. It'd be an inside turn, heel, nick. Good. Or an outside turn, heel, nick. Now, I'm not nicking the collar each time because the dog's really not doing anything wrong. Remember, if you make any sort of correction using negative reinforcement, it's important to allow the dog to do it successfully afterwards and then give the dog positive reinforcement. So don't move on to the next subject until you've allowed the dog, after a correction, to get success. Good boy. Let's move on to the recall. Sit. Now, when we're calling our dog, if he doesn't come to us or veers off course, it's simply the repetition of the command followed by a pull with the lead and a nick at the same time. It would look like this. Now I'm not going to hit the collar because he didn't do anything wrong, but it would look like this. Heel, nick. Good boy. Sit, and then a repetition to get success. Heel. Good. When you're attempting to get success, no pressure on the lead. Make him do it all himself. Good boy. Sit. Good. Now we'll switch over to the long lead. During your formal training and collar conditioning, it's important to implement some controlled distractions. And by that I mean we're going to actually literally have either another dog or some sort of distracting element there purposely to get the dog to make a mistake during his obedience such that he learns to perform these commands consistently with distractions present. Because remember, we get him in the field, there's going to be many, many distractions. So we have to have the dog conditioned to perform these commands to avoid pressure while we're in a controlled environment if we ever expect him to do it in the field. Sit. Okay, we've got the long lead on, practicing having him sit. Sit. Good. Okay, we've got our long lead on the dog now, and we're practicing having him sit at a distance. Heel, sit. Good boy. We'll practice with the long lead, having the dog sit for longer intervals of time and when we're at greater distances. If the dog was to make a mistake and break the sit command, the correction would look like this. Sit, nick. Okay, the electric pressure at the same time. The nick would occur at the same time as the pull with the lead. If the dog has repeated failures during collar conditioning, we're going to use the same stair-step concept with the e-collar as we did with the leash. So if the dog breaks a sit command, for instance, we'll give him a lower level with the collar in combination with the leash pressure. If he breaks it again immediately, we'll raise up a level. Once you get about 5 to 6 nicks during your collar conditioning session, you're going to just not use the collar for the rest of the session, just use your leash, and then finish out with whatever you do in your daily routine, like doing some fun retrieves, etc. This portion of collar conditioning should last at least a week, and a training week meaning at least 5 days. And as the days go on, you will start to be aware of which levels on the collar get the job done without confusing the dog, but quickly. So you'll start to note what is a good working level to start at. In other words, the first working level that you use might be a little bit too low. So if you notice that you're having to use repeated corrections with that and it's not really making a difference, then the next day you can start at a higher level. Again, you will stair step increase the pressure with each continued failure that day by increasing by 1 level on your collar. It'll be about right, getting about 5 to 6 nicks a day. After your training week is over, make an assessment of whether you believe that the dog is reacting properly to the e-collar, which means he promptly gets a success after his correction. And once you get to the point where you feel like you're having a good continuity with successes after collar corrections, you can begin to transition into just using the e-collar with the lead on. So week 2, in general, we're going to begin to use the e-collar with the lead on, but we're not going to pull the lead. We're going to let the collar do the work. So I'll show you a set of corrections for each one of these. The sit-stay correction would look like this. I still have the leash on, just in case something doesn't go right. I can show him with the leash, but I'm not going to pull on it. So I'll do the hand gesture with the nick. So if he broke the sit command, it would look like this. Sit, nick. Okay? We're going to do the same thing with the heel. Heel. If I had to make an outside turn, it would look like this. Heel, Nick. Good boy. Sit. If I had to make an inside turn, it would look like this. Heel, Nick. Good. Good. Sit. And for the recall, if I had to make a correction, it would look like this. Heel. Good. Sit. Heel, Nick. Good. Now I'm saying the word Nick. Obviously you do not need to say the word Nick. I'm saying that word so you know the exact timing with which I'm pressing the button. A lot of these are simulated nicks because the dog's not making a mistake. And remember, we only use the e-collar when the dog's making a mistake on his obedience. We also have the e-collar on. Now I have a DT Systems micro IDT collar on the dog. And the reason we've got it on him is just to show you how well this particular unit fits on a smaller dog. As DT gets a little bigger, you'll see me use the H2O series collar. It's a little larger unit meant for